Okay, Andrea, this is Mrs. Gonzalez here. Um, I'm just responding to your question that you said you didn't understand the historical context um, portion of the literary analysis skill builder packet. Um, as you know, one of our vocabulary terms is, well, academic vocabulary term is historical context. Now, over here on the Quizlet tab here that I have, you'll notice that it says historical context refers to the social conditions that inspired or influenced a literary work's creation. To understand and appreciate some works, the reader must relate them to particular events in history. And from what I remember last semester, there was a story that you read in the English 1 workbook that you used to get credit for the first semester. And you had problems with this as well, being able to understand how the historical context of a work is influences the literary work of an author. Now, it seems like you're having a little bit of trouble with this again, so um, let me first explain. Besides, you already got the definition there, and I'm sure you're practicing it, but context is basically the environment that surrounds something. Okay? In this case, that something is an author's book or poem, story, or whatever it is that they're writing. That's the environment is what's around it. Okay? In this case, the environment is something is can be a historical event or historical events. Okay? Strive toward freedom and necessary to protect ourselves were written within a certain context that's very influential to the work. For instance, in that time, that event, which was several little events, but it was a time period, it was the civil rights movement. What I would do, one of the things that I would highly suggest that you do, I'm not forcing you to do it, but if you really want to understand this because you have had problems with this, is understanding what the civil rights movement is. I would Google it. I would, or Wikipedia it, and just type in civil rights movement and what that exactly was. You may already know, but I'm just in case you don't, I would look it up. But in any case, how to do the literary analysis skill builder. First of all, the reason why I say that you have to Wikipedia or Google it is because you have to know something about the civil rights movement and the types of things that were going on during that time period. So, for instance, this here this assignment, at least this part of the assignment, refers only to necessary to protect ourselves. Okay, and that refers to the interview done by Malcolm X, which we heard the last time that we were in class together. And in his interview, Malcolm X makes references to specific things or events that have happened or in history, and especially during that time he's reacting to them and he's answering questions about them. So when, for instance, when he says this might be something that you might use for number one, you just would need to go find it. For instance, he talks about, that there's some entities out there that would want to see him and his people at the end of a rope. Okay, you have to know what he means at that time. What does it mean to be at the end of a rope for someone in that time period participating in that movement and being African American, and what it means at that time for someone like Malcolm X to say that, what was going on that time period. And that clearly refers to back in the day when white people, racist people, when they were against a black person or someone because they were so racist, they would lynch them. And lynch them is when you hang people from a rope, right? Usually from a tree or something. So when he says, people seen him at the end of a rope, he's talking about the process of really bad practice of African Americans being tried without due process, meaning without any kind of law. They would find them guilty for whatever reason, and they would just kill them by hanging them. Now that would be a sentence from necessary to protect ourselves that would go here. You would just put it in quotes, okay? But there's other, and then in the historical context, right? As it says up here, on the chart below, identify 3 sentences that refer to it. So you put the sentence here, straight from the book, whatever is referring to a certain period in to that period in history, civil rights movement, or from something that he's talking about. And then you tell, just like I told you right now, basically you're explaining what this sentence means to this, what he was talking about. And you would say something like, during this time period and before, African Americans were charged and tried for crimes, usually unjustly and for racist reasons, and they were hanged through a process called lynching. And so he's referring to that practice. So you would put that here. So basically you're finding 3. I gave you 1 pretty much. So you have to find 2 more that refer to, and it doesn't have to necessarily, it says right here, on the chart, identify 3 sentences for necessary that refer to events or conditions at the time of the interview. So you don't go back to the times, to the American Revolution. Look for things, and it's also said people, public figures here. So if he mentions like Abernathy, Martin Luther King, you have to put them down as well, and you have to explain that and what they did. So we're trying to figure out, basically the purpose of this assignment is to figure out how text is influenced by, and the person influences the person who's saying it or writing it. And text doesn't have to be writing, it could be something said as well. Everything is text. So in this case it's an interview, so any part of that interview that you hear that references something having to do with the civil rights movement, basically that's what they're asking about here. So you write, you actually you literally quote it, you write it exactly the way it is in the textbook, what Malcolm X said, or even someone, Les Crane mentioned something or what have you, then you would put whatever's, and then you explain what's the historical context. In other words, why is he saying that? Explain that sentence. What is he trying to say by that? And what is it referring to? Actually, I think that's better. What is Malcolm X referring to with that sentence? That's what historical context is. Okay? Go ahead. I know it's late right now, and I imagine you're asleep. But as soon as you listen to this video, when you watch it, give me a reply back and tell me if you kind of already got it. Okay? In either case, if you're still kind of fuzzy on it, but you know something of it, just give it a try. At least, and I'll look it over and I'll see if I can clarify some questions for you. Okay? So make sure you reply back, okay? I'll talk to you later, sweetie. See you Monday. Bye-bye.